Have you ever walked away from a toxic relationship thinking it was over, only to realize the real battle had just begun? What if I told you that when manipulators lose their grip on you, they don't retreat? They reload, and their next attack is quieter, but far more dangerous. This isn't just about self-defense. It's about building a kind of inner strength so unshakable that even the most cunning manipulator can't touch it. These aren't just dramatic warnings. They're lived realities for people who dare to take back their power. The moment you set a boundary, you're not just protecting yourself. You're issuing a silent challenge to every manipulator who once relied on your silence. Have you ever noticed the second you stop letting someone control you, they don't walk away peacefully? Number, they evolve. Manipulators don't give up. They change form. When guilt trips, gaslighting, or silent treatments no longer work, they adopt new strategies. Their next approach is often more subtle, more calculated, and more psychologically invasive. The war doesn't end when you walk away. It just changes terrain. What follows isn't peace, it's the second phase. Manipulation by proxy, by perception, by silence. And what you'll learn today isn't just how to spot the tactics, it's how to remain rooted no matter what storm they send your way. This is more than survival. This is about sovereignty, because the Stoic path doesn't just help you endure, it teaches you to become immovable. We're going deep into the minds of manipulators and even deeper into the Stoic toolbox that has helped warriors, leaders, and thinkers remain unshakable for over 2,000 years. If you're ready to sharpen your mental armor and walk forward unbreakable, then stay with me. Because this isn't just information, it might be the very clarity you've been searching for. Let's begin where manipulation becomes loudest, not in private whispers, but public judgment. When a manipulator can no longer control you in private, they'll try to control how others see you in public. And it begins with shame. First, public shaming, the coward's megaphone. When manipulators lose private control over you, they don't disappear, they escalate. They trade whispers for microphones. This tactic is often masked as concern, constructive feedback, or just being honest. But make no mistake, it's a campaign. Not to change you, but to change how others see you. Because when they can't control your actions, they aim to control your reputation. This isn't about truth, it's about narrative. They say things like, "I worry they're not handling things well. I used to respect them, but lately, something feels off." I'm not trying to start drama, but people should know the kind of person they're dealing with. And suddenly your name is being reshaped without your voice in the room. Take Daniel, a brilliant engineer, soft-spoken but sharp. His consistent results made him a rising star at his tech firm. But his manager, someone threatened by Daniel's quiet excellence, began slowly discrediting him. In meetings, he dismissed Daniel's ideas with a smile. Nice thought, but not realistic. He laughed during Daniel's presentations, whispering comments to others. He publicly questioned Daniel's team spirit, even though Daniel often stayed late helping colleagues. To the untrained eye, it seemed playful, but it was calculated. And this is how public shaming often operates. It hides behind humor, couches itself in honesty, and cloaks hostility in faux professionalism. If you react, you look emotional. If you stay silent, they gain ground. It's a psychological pincer move. But Daniel had something the manager didn't: composure. He didn't retaliate. He didn't gossip. He let his work speak. Over time, those who had quietly doubted began to notice a pattern, and the manipulator's mask slipped. This is where Stoicism becomes armor. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Daniel refused to give the manipulator the emotional theater he wanted, because public shaming is only effective if it can provoke you into proving the false image. Want to take back your power? Stay steady. Document everything. Let time be your ally. Eventually, the crowd sees, because truth may be quiet, but it's persistent. Here's the deeper Stoic insight. When someone tries to shame you publicly, they're not revealing your weakness. They're revealing their desperation. Their need to manipulate perception shows how little power they have left over reality. And that in itself is a silent victory. So when the spotlight turns hostile, don't run, don't explain, don't beg. Stand, rooted, calm, unapologetic. Because in a world obsessed with performance, authenticity becomes its own rebellion. 2. Playing the victim, a masterclass in manipulation. Once the manipulator realizes they can no longer dominate the story by painting you as unstable or incompetent, they flip the script completely. They become the victim. Suddenly, they're the one who's hurt, the one who tried everything to make it work, the one who cared too much. This is not just reputation management. This is emotional theater. They'll say things like, "I just don't understand what happened. I gave them everything. I never thought they'd treat me like this." And here's the psychological brilliance of it. They weaponize empathy, not yours, but the empathy of the people around you. When Matt left a toxic business partnership, he expected resistance. What he didn't expect was the public pity party. His ex-partner made no direct accusations. He just began sharing his story about how hard the split had been, about how he'd lost a friend, about how he didn't understand why Matt became so distant. Suddenly, mutual contacts began reaching out, not to support Matt, but to question him. "What really happened between you two? He seems really broken up. Maybe you were a little harsh." Matt didn't respond. He didn't take the bait. He knew that defending himself would only feed the narrative. So he let his work speak. He remained focused, consistent, grounded. And over time, people began to see the pattern, that his ex wasn't interested in healing, only in hijacking the story. Epictetus wrote, "He who blames others has a long way to go on his journey." Victimhood, when false, isn't vulnerability, it's manipulation, and it thrives on reaction. If you lash out, you confirm their story. If you defend too hard, you look guilty. But if you stand quietly in your integrity, you create space for the truth to breathe. Let's take this even further. Why does this tactic work so well? Because society often confuses emotion with truth. The more hurt someone appears, the more believable they seem. But Stoicism reminds us, emotion can be honest, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. You are not responsible for how someone rewrites your story to feel better about their own behavior. When someone paints your boundary as betrayal, let them, because those who know you will either ask or already understand, and those who don't, their opinion was never yours to manage. False victimhood is a mirror. It reflects the manipulator's inability to process reality without making themselves the center of it. You don't need to argue with a mirror. You just need to stop standing in front of it. Stand in your truth. Let time reveal what ego always tries to obscure. And remember, real victims seek healing. Fake ones seek attention. 3. Subtle lies. Poison in the well. Some forms of manipulation come like a storm, loud, undeniable. But others are like humidity, quiet, invisible, and slowly suffocating. Subtle lies belong in the second category. They don't accuse, they suggest, they don't expose, they imply. The manipulator doesn't say you're dishonest. They just question your recent behavior. They don't claim you're unstable. They merely express concern. It sounds like, "I'm not saying anything's wrong, but something feels off with them lately. I used to trust them completely. I'm not sure what changed." Just watch. You'll see what I mean. This is manipulation by proxy, using innuendo and suggestion to contaminate how others see you without ever taking direct responsibility. The brilliance of this tactic is that it leaves no fingerprints. If you try to defend yourself, you seem defensive. If you ignore it, the doubt spreads. It's emotional warfare fought in whispers. Take Elena. After walking away from an emotionally manipulative relationship, she noticed an eerie shift. Friends grew distant, text threads dried up, invitations stopped coming. When she finally reached out to one of them, the reply was telling, "Hey, I didn't want to get involved, but he seemed really worried about you. Said you'd been acting strangely and might need space. I figured it was best to give you that." It hadn't been a smear campaign. It had been a quiet campaign of doubt. Her ex hadn't slandered her. He had seeded concern, just enough to reframe her growth as instability. And it worked, until it didn't. Because Elena stopped chasing. She started showing up, not with defenses, but with presence. Not with explanations, but with consistency. And slowly, her real self spoke louder than the illusion. Seneca said, "The truth is simple. Lies require complication." That's why this tactic eventually collapses under its own weight, because truth, lived well, becomes undeniable. But in the meantime, you must hold steady. Don't get pulled into every rumor. Don't correct every whisper. Don't hand over your peace to people who haven't earned your truth. The Stoic path here is endurance. Let your actions become your rebuttal. Let your character be the counterweight to distortion. And if you feel the need to respond, ask yourself, who is this for? My peace or their perception? Because the moment you abandon your composure to chase a lie, the manipulator wins. Instead, do what Elena did. Live consistently, quietly, powerfully. And eventually the fog of suggestion will lift. And when it does, you'll still be standing, clear and unchanged. That's the truth no lie can bury. 4. Isolation, the silent siege. Of all the tactics manipulators use, isolation is one of the most insidious. Why? Because it doesn't announce itself. It arrives slowly, quietly, and by the time you notice, you're already on the outside looking in. Unlike public shaming, which is loud and humiliating, or subtle lies, which are slippery and shadowy, isolation is empty. You're not attacked, you're excluded, not confronted, but erased. And that's what makes it so effective. It's not what they say, it's what they stop saying. You'll notice it first in absence. Conversations end when you enter the room. Invitations you once received quietly disappear. People who once shared ideas with you now go around you. This is how the manipulator creates distance, not through violence, but vacancy. Let's return to Rachel. After being promoted over a colleague who expected the role, she noticed something shift. There was no confrontation, no sabotage, just silence. He didn't criticize her openly. He simply began talking less, looking away during meetings, offering lukewarm responses to her ideas. It bled into the team culture. Eventually, even her allies grew quiet. At first, Rachel questioned herself. Had she changed? Had she become arrogant? Was she imagining it? And that's the trap. Isolation makes you doubt not just others, but yourself. But Rachel caught herself. She remembered what Stoicism teaches, to judge not by noise, but by reason. So she looked at the evidence. Her work ethic hadn't changed. Her integrity was intact. Her results were strong. So instead of chasing connections, she doubled down on consistency. Seneca advised, associate with people who are likely to improve you. So Rachel quietly built new alliances. She mentored junior staff. She collaborated with other departments. She let her light reach where the shadows had gathered. And in time, those who had followed the manipulator's distance began returning, not with apologies, but with renewed respect. Why? Because truth, like gravity, is hard to ignore for long. But let's take this even further. Let's look at the long game of isolation. Manipulators isolate you not just to punish you, but to create confusion. Because when you're disconnected from others, your mind fills in the gaps with the worst assumptions. You become your own saboteur. That's why Stoic clarity is so essential. It helps you separate the silence of others from the worth within yourself. You learn to say, their absence does not define my value. Their withdrawal is not proof of my wrongness. Their quiet does not need to be filled with my doubt. And here's the deeper truth. The manipulator isolates you not because you are weak, but because your presence threatens their influence. When you stop being easy to control, you stop being convenient. And so they try to exile you emotionally. But solitude, when chosen, is clarity. Use it. Isolation is not your enemy when you understand what it's revealing. It shows you who fears your strength, who resents your rise, who needs a crowd to validate their control. So if you find yourself pushed to the margins, don't shrink, expand. Let your silence be filled with substance. Let your space become sanctuary. And let your presence, steady and unshaken, remind them. You never needed a circle to walk your path. You only needed your footing. 5. Guilt, a blade wrapped in empathy. Of all the emotional weapons manipulators wield, guilt is the most beautifully disguised. It doesn't arrive with rage or accusation. It shows up as tenderness, as loyalty, as love with a twist. It says, I just miss how things used to be. After all I've done for you, I guess success changes people. Unlike anger, guilt doesn't provoke. It persuades. It doesn't seek justice. It seeks submission. And for those of us wired for empathy, it works like a charm because we don't want to be selfish. We want to be good. And the manipulator knows this. Chris did. For years, he was the dependable one in his family, the helper, the steady hand, the peacemaker. When he was offered a life-changing opportunity out of state, he hesitated, not because he wasn't ready, but because he knew what came next. And he was right. The response wasn't celebration. It was sorrow disguised as sentiment. Oh, so you're really leaving? We just thought you'd always be here. Guess your job means more than your family now. It wasn't angry, it was disappointed. And that stung more. Chris carried the weight with him for weeks. He doubted. He wrestled. He even considered turning the offer down. Until one night, he journaled a single question. If this love is real, why does it require me to shrink? That was the moment he saw it. This wasn't love. It was control with good intentions. It was fear wearing a mask of loyalty. Guilt is powerful because it echoes in your own voice. You begin policing yourself. You begin editing your joy. You start apologizing for outgrowing the version of you that kept other people comfortable. But Stoicism teaches your duty is not to preserve others' expectations. It is to live in alignment with virtue, wisdom, and growth. Epictetus reminds us, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. You are not responsible for someone else's discomfort with your evolution. Still, let's be fair. Not all guilt is manipulation. Sometimes it's conscience. So how do we tell the difference? Ask, is this guilt inviting me to reflect or to regress? Is it asking me to repair or to retreat? Is it reminding me of my impact or demanding I abandon my growth? That's how you know. Let's add another voice to this. Maria, a nurse who left her hometown to pursue advanced studies, faced the same guilt. But unlike Chris, she said nothing. She just internalized it. And years later, even with 2 degrees and a fulfilling life, she still whispered apologies in her mind every time she felt joy. That's the silent legacy of guilt left unchecked. It becomes part of your identity. So here's the call to clarity. If someone makes you feel guilty for changing, growing, evolving, they are not celebrating you. They are centering themselves. And the most loving thing you can do for them and for you is to break that cycle. Release the guilt, not with anger, but with clarity. Say it out loud if you need to. I don't owe my diminishment to anyone's comfort. Because real love, it will grow with you, not guilt you into staying small. 6. Destroying confidence, death by 1,000 doubts. Confidence rarely shatters all at once. Instead, it's eroded slowly, drop by people who claim to care. It doesn't begin with insults. It begins with hesitation. Are you sure that's the right move? You used to be more careful. I'm just looking out for you. Each comment alone means little, but collectively, they chip away at your inner compass until you start outsourcing your certainty. And that's the goal, to make you doubt your instincts so deeply that you start asking for permission to be yourself. Let's return to Priya. She left her corporate job to start her own creative agency. At first, she was on fire, pitching bold ideas, closing clients, trusting her gut. Her partner, initially supportive, began to shift. He never told her she was wrong. He just kept checking in. You really want to launch that campaign now? Are you sure you're ready for this client? Just playing devil's advocate here. And slowly, Priya began to pull back. Her voice got quieter in meetings. Her ideas dulled at the edges. She second-guessed her strengths, not because she lost her talent, but because she absorbed someone else's doubt. This is the strategy. Death by 1,000 doubts. The manipulator doesn't need to discredit you. They just need you to stop trusting yourself. Priya started journaling again, something she hadn't done since college. She listed every decision she'd made without his input, every win, every moment of flow. And the more she wrote, the more she remembered. The voice in her head wasn't always hers. It had been shaped. Confidence is not arrogance. It's memory. It's the stored evidence of every time you chose yourself and it worked. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." When someone slowly teaches you to seek their approval before every move, you lose more than boldness. You lose access to your integrity. So how do you rebuild? Start tracking your own instincts. Write down what you feel, then write what you did. Look for alignment. Surround yourself with people who remind you who you were before you were doubted. Interrupt the spiral with one sentence. I remember when I trusted myself, and it worked. Confidence isn't something you perform. It's something you return to. And when someone tries to strip that away through constant skepticism, remember, their doubt is not data. Sometimes their fear of your independence sounds like concern. But true concern uplifts. It doesn't minimize. It doesn't hover. It doesn't slowly erase you. So if you've been shrinking, stop. Not with defiance, but with decision. Decide to believe yourself again. Because confidence built on experience is stronger than any shadow someone tries to cast. And when you reclaim it, don't apologize. Just rise. Why Stoicism is the antidote, rebuilding the mind they tried to bend. After the manipulation ends, after the lies, the gaslighting, the isolation, the guilt, what's left? You, but often a version of you that feels shaken, foggy, hypervigilant, unsure of your own instincts. This is where the manipulator hoped to leave you, fractured, reactive, disconnected from your center. And this is exactly why Stoicism is not just helpful, it's revolutionary. Because unlike modern advice that tells you to clap back, cut off, or call out, Stoicism teaches you to return to yourself. When you've been manipulated, you don't just lose relationships, you lose your internal compass. You begin filtering your decisions through the imagined reactions of others. You don't ask, is this right? You ask, will they approve? Marcus Aurelius offers a radical cure. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The Stoic doesn't aim to control others. They aim to master perception. They don't resist discomfort. They endure it. They don't outsource worth, they define it internally. Imagine waking up and journaling, like Epictetus did. What will I face today? Where might my ego try to protect me with illusion? Where can I remain unmoved? This is not passive acceptance, it's active fortification. Stoicism is the antidote because it does three things manipulation cannot survive. It removes your dependency on validation. It separates facts from feelings. It makes you immune to flattery and attack alike. Let's revisit Elena, Rachel, Priya, Chris. What did they all do? They stopped reacting. They started reflecting. They stopped chasing image. They started anchoring truth. They didn't fight back in the traditional sense. They practiced stillness, integrity, composure. The manipulator thrives in chaos. The Stoic thrives in clarity. And the best part? You don't need perfect calm to begin. You just need a pause, a breath between reaction and response. A question, what would my higher self do here? That moment, tiny as it is the death of manipulation. Because it shows you are no longer programmable, you are no longer running their script, you are writing your own. Healing from manipulation isn't about deleting the past, it's about retraining the mind they tried to bend. That's what Stoicism gives you, a mind that is self-directed, values-based, untouchable. And in a world of noise, that kind of clarity is power, not power over others, power over your peace. Now you're ready for the final test. When they come back, not with threats, but with apologies. Let's talk about the Trojan horse they call reconciliation. 7. Fake reconciliation, the Trojan horse of manipulation. When all else fails, when the lies are exposed, when public shaming doesn't land, when you stop reacting to guilt, there's still one trick left. One that's disarmingly kind, deeply familiar, and incredibly dangerous. They come back, not as the enemy, but as the reformed friend, the humbled ex, the one who's seen the light. This isn't an apology, it's a strategy. It's the manipulator's final act, reconciliation. They arrive with soft words and lowered eyes. They say they've changed, that they've been doing the work, that they finally understand. And most dangerously of all, they sound just like someone who has healed. And it's tempting to believe them, because you want it to be true, because hope is easier than continued distance, because the idea of healing feels more comforting than the weight of the wall you've built. But here's what you have to understand. Real change doesn't knock, it waits. Real change doesn't chase, it rebuilds. Let's go back to Darius. After months of distancing himself from a toxic friendship, he began to flourish. New habits, new clarity, new strength. Then one afternoon, a message popped up. Hey, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I know I hurt you. I'd really love to reconnect. It was honest, vulnerable, or so it seemed. They met up. At first it was peaceful, reflective, but within 2 weeks the same patterns began to reemerge. I just wish you'd text more. You used to be more open. Feels like you're still holding things against me. The smile was back, so was the leash. Because fake reconciliation isn't about rebuilding, it's about regaining proximity so they can assess what parts of you they can still influence. It's about testing your boundaries for cracks. Psychologically, it's brilliant. It activates the part of your brain wired for connection, for forgiveness, for closure. But Stoicism doesn't deal in illusions. It deals in evidence. Epictetus warned us, when someone shows you who they are, believe the pattern, not the apology. The flip side, real reconciliation. Now let's talk about contrast, because not every return is a manipulation. Sometimes people do change. The real question is, how do you tell? Let's consider Janelle. She cut off a close friend after years of subtle undermining. But unlike Darius, when her friend reached out months later, She didn't ask to pick up where they left off. She just wrote, "I understand if you don't reply. I've spent time reflecting. I'm in therapy. I'm not looking to explain away the past, only to say I now understand why you stepped back. Thank you for the boundary. It helped me grow." That was it. No request, no pressure, just accountability. And here's the difference. True change respects distance. It doesn't demand instant restoration. It's patient. It's humble. If someone is truly changing, they will respect your space. They will do the work, even if you're no longer there to witness it. Stoic clarity on forgiveness. Forgiveness, from a Stoic perspective, is internal freedom. It's choosing to release anger not because the other deserves it, but because you deserve peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean reinstatement. Seneca reminds us, "Pardon others often, yourself never." That is, hold yourself to a high standard and extend grace to others, but only when it does not endanger your well-being. You can release the bitterness without reopening the door. You can wish someone healing without letting them back into the room where you're rebuilding yours. So when they come back, ask yourself, do they honor my boundaries now, or only when I enforce them? Is their peace sustainable or just convenient? Do they seek reconciliation or reinstatement? Because one is about healing, and the other is just control in a softer tone. Let them shed their skin, but don't forget, a new look doesn't mean a new nature. When you protect your peace, you're not being cold. You're being conscious. You're not punishing them. You're preserving you. And that, more than anything else, is what they never expected. Because this time, the door stayed closed. And you didn't flinch. That's Stoicism in its purest form. Not just philosophy, but protection. Now that we've seen the full map of their manipulation playbook, from shame to silence, from lies to guilt, from fake apologies to quiet sabotage, there's one thing that stands clear above all else. You don't fight manipulation by becoming louder or harsher or more aggressive. You win by becoming clearer. Clear in your mind, clear in your values, clear in your reactions. And that clarity, it's a light they can't stand. So what do you do when someone tries to manipulate your reality? You stand, still, clear, rooted. You remember, truth does not chase. Confidence is not loud. Boundaries are not cruelty. Each tactic manipulators use reveals their fear, not your weakness. If you're watching this, it means you're already waking up. You're already building the one thing they can't touch, clarity. And that's what terrifies them most. If this message stirred something inside you, like it, share it, and most importantly, leave a comment below. Share your story. Your strength might just be the survival guide someone else needs today. Subscribe now. We're building something stronger than fear. We're building minds they can't bend.